everybody. Thanks for being here and for sharing. It's exciting to see we've got a range of people who are already awake and ready to think hard about things. Boy, in Minnesota at least, this is like the least nice weather we've had on a Saturday in months, so could be worse. All right, cool. Thank you all for taking a minute to introduce yourselves. For those of you I have not met before, my name is Eileen King. My hair is obviously considerably longer than it was in that picture, but I think that's the case for a lot of us right now. I was in the inaugural year of the Minnesota Codes cohort, and as I'm sure you saw abundantly in the chat during the announcements, it's an amazing experience that I would wholeheartedly recommend for anybody who can get to even some of the meetings in person. Besides that, I have taught 612 tech and design at a charter school in the northern suburbs and also for St. Paul Public Schools. And now I'm the Education Partnerships Coordinator for the Bakken Museum in South Minneapolis. We're going to reopen next month. Come see us if you have not been there before. It's a really cool place. And when I'm not at work, I run Northfield Coder Dojo, which is one of Code Savvy's programs. Real briefly, for anyone who's not familiar, Coder Dojo is a huge international organization of loosely organized meetups of young people who want to code stuff and old people like us who volunteer to help them with that. And it's really fun and really cool. There's like 1,500 chapters of that around the world. They started in Ireland like 8 years ago. There's a great big group in the Twin Cities. There's some scattered all over Minnesota. I have a small rural one that is the best. Oh, we got more people introducing themselves in the chat. Great. Thank you so much for being here. Cool. Norwood Young America. I've been there. Right on. Okay, cool. So let's dive the heck in. Again, I'm going to talk at you real briefly, and then we're going to try to do some thinking together. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page, when we say computer science unplugged, what are we talking about? So the sort of OG book on the subject, which was straight up called Computer Science Unplugged, was written 20 years ago in 1999. So I guess just over 20 years ago, which is kind of wild, but it has definitely taken off as the movement for coding in the classroom has too. So the folks behind that book defined it as computer science without a computer, really meaning things that are strictly about understanding something about the science of computing and or computation. A lot of the time, the way that has come to be used is really any kind of computational thinking type activities that can be done without technology. And then also, there are tangential and kind of close cousin activities, like if you're watching a video about how computers work, that's not technically without a computer, but still seems within the spirit. Similarly, there are kind of logical thinking and computing-based puzzles that don't involve programming, and so sometimes we think of that stuff as unplugged as well. I don't see any purpose in policing the definition. I think let's talk about really anything that's going to help expand ways that we can bring computing to more people. So anyway, wow, that was a really lot of words for one bullet point. So why do we do this? Why are unplugged activities valuable? This is the 21st century. Everyone can use computing knowledge, but not everyone has equal access to computers. I'm sure we're all seeing that more profoundly than we ever have before. And even, for those of us who do have enough devices to go around, there are days that they don't work. We've all seen that before. It's great to have an unplugged activity in your back pocket. Likewise, I think some people alluded to in their introductions, not everybody can make time to learn to use a programming language, so a quicker unplugged activity can offer an opportunity to integrate into other content areas or to teach lessons that you don't have time to teach a full computer-based lesson about. And then, of course, not everybody feels good about computers. Some of our colleagues are scared of them. Some of our students have had bad experiences or experienced stereotype threat. And so unplugged activities can help us broaden that. Closely related, but worth reiterating because it's so important. Unplugged activities offer opportunities for movement and for student interaction in ways that really contribute to an ambient sense of belonging. That comes up a lot in NC Witt's research about broadening participation in computer science, is what you can do to send implicit messages about who belongs here. And a lot of the research shows that anytime you can get people talking to each other, that helps them remember that not all of computing is sitting in a room by yourself and not moving and not talking to anyone, and that broadens who feels like they belong in it. And then, of course, there's a lot more to computer science than programming, and Unplugged Activities offer hands-on ways to get people to experience some of those things. Cool, great. So we've got some people throwing some really good stuff in the chat. Awesome, thanks for that. Continuing really briefly, there's not a ton of research on Unplugged Activities, but this link here goes to a giant meta study that has some really good stuff in it if you're a research nerd like I am. If you're not, just really briefly, Unplugged Activities are the most effective. I pulled out a couple of bullet points when they involve interaction, when students do something challenging that involves them discovering something. So I'm sure it goes without saying that while many worksheets probably qualify as unplugged, that's not great learning. They'll be most effective when you elicit students' prior knowledge and ideas about what's being taught, connect it to their lives rather than just it being a fun activity. And then as much as we just said Unplugged Activities are awesome because they mean we don't have to use the computer, they're often most effective when they are connected to computer-based activities rather than trying to use CS Unplugged as a curriculum in itself. So something to keep in mind there. And then also, especially older students are gonna learn the most when the connection to the computing concepts that you're teaching is not an afterthought. When it's not like, we played this fun game and oh, by the way, here's how it connects to what we're supposed to be learning in class. When the connections are throughout and you encourage students to also reflect on them. So basically good Unplugged Activities are good teaching in general. But those are things that there is empirical research to support. So wow, look at all of those people sharing really awesome things. We've got a comment that says that first bullet point is the sticking point with distance learning, in my opinion. Yeah, student-to-student interaction is one of the biggest challenges I've seen with distance learning as well. So, wow, let's dive the heck into sharing more resources for that so we can start talking about it. I know that this resources slide is a little bit overwhelming, but instead of trying to keep it short and big text, I tried to explain what each of these resources is most useful for. There's some really good stuff there for different things related to like really traditional how computing concepts work, and then also strands of computational thinking, different videos about how stuff works. Code.org is doing some really good work with this. There's a lot of good stuff from NCWIT, especially if you want resources for engaging in conversation about computing in broader culture, which has not traditionally been part of CS Unplugged, but I think may have a place there. And then of course, we'd be remiss not to plug CS to go with Code Savvy. There's a weekly themed student-facing challenge of some kind and a video showing an unplugged way to come at it. I think also probably a lot of our sponsors have some good content, especially Beans Magazine has done some really solid stuff with Unplugged Activities, so check out their website as well. All right, and that was entirely too many words for me to say, so let's turn it over to you. Discussion question-wise, we've put together kind of 3 sets of questions. We've got some questions about Unplugged Activities in practice, like where have you seen success with this? Are there particular places that you want to develop Unplugged Activities? How do you see them as most useful? What do you do with them? How do you assess them? We've got questions about kind of the broader context, like distance learning and broadening participation from underrepresented groups. And then, of course, inviting you to share resources, whether that's lesson plans or other places to look. Wow, looks like people are already doing a whole lot of that in the chat. So trying to have a free-flowing discussion with 20 participants when there's chat and sound seems kind of overwhelming. But does anything really stick out to anybody? Anybody really want to get talk going here right off the bat?
I can start. So this is Andrea. Hey, everybody. So teacher from Minnesota and director of educator training with Code Savvy. I would say, like, thinking about greatest successes with Unplugged Activities has just been the engagement factor. I think for students, like you were saying, Eileen, that have maybe had some preconceived notions or saw themselves as maybe not belonging in a computer science course, Unplugged Activities have seemed to really open things up a lot more. And I think part of that is the student-to-student interaction, which I know Vicki was saying, like, that's a big sticking point in distance learning. I completely agree. So finding ways to continue to foster that through distance learning can be challenging, but a lot of kids are home with others. So finding ways to maybe communicate or share unplugged activities that students can do at home, I think could be cool. I don't know if anybody has experience with that. I did one with my 4-year-old, and then we showed it to my nephew, and now it's sort of caught on. It's where we reimagined a hopscotch game as a flow chart and used different things like flip a coin, if heads, I don't know, my daughter's into flossing, do the floss, like all those kinds of things. And that was really fun. So thinking about ways that we could communicate and share unplugged activities at home. I don't know.
Oh, Andrea, you just gave me an idea. We have a bike path like right outside of my house, and well, down the road a little bit. And neighbors have been doing different things on the bike path, and like one of them was they represented like the number of species by color and like length of line. But we could add a hopscotch one, and we might have to leave some materials there. Like we've got big foam dice we could leave out on the bike path and just let people interact with it that way. There's a number of like kids and families that are using the bike path now, and I think they'd really love that. I love that idea. It's gonna rain today, so probably not today, but this week we'll get at it. Today and tomorrow, I think. Love it.
Great idea, Tracy. I love that so much.
Yeah,
Community really flow charting.
Totally.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Andrea. I think it's hard to not think about unplugged and people interacting with each other as being separate right now, just because all of our connecting, at least with our students, is very plugged. But you're right. Leveraging the people that you have in your home is a really good idea.
I think a big part of the interaction, sorry to jump in here.
No, please.
Is the reflection component of it, especially when we're doing distance learning. That's, we can't really prove that they've done the activity, but their reflection shows that they've thought through the process. And I think that really allows them to show that experience, and then those responses could be shared in some type of format. So that might be something to think about as a way to show that interaction, and also use that reflection piece.
I can kind of piggyback off what Amber was saying with student reflection. We've been pushing out one CS lesson a week during distance learning. In the last 2 weeks, we've added a Flipgrid component. So students are sharing what they learned on Flipgrid, and then we're encouraging them to reply to each other in video. And we've gotten the biggest student response with those Flipgrid videos, and just watching their faces light up as they're talking, and then as they reply to their students, it's really continued that community sense. And so we are going to continue to use Flipgrid every week until we can think of another way.
Right on. Thank you both. Yeah, I've got some shout outs for Flipgrid in the chat. Let's see, looking through the chat to see if there's anything else.
Whitney, are you in Bloomington? Is that right?
Yep, okay. I'm in Bloomington.
Yeah. Are the challenges that you've been giving out, are they like public on your website, or anything that you can share with us?
Yes, I can definitely share those with you. Let me just think about the best way, and then I can drop that into the resources. They've been really simple. Like the first one we did last week was draw a robot that could solve one problem for you or someone around you, and then share your robot with the class. Another one, we did a live computer science kind of interview with students on a Google Meet, and then we said, share one thing you learned with your classmates from the computer scientist, or a question you have. So I can definitely share those in there, Tracy.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have a favorite resource you want to share, or either something that's gone well or something that you want to help try to troubleshoot and debug with regard to unplugged activities and distance learning?
One of the activities, and this was in class, and I don't know how well this would go in the virtual setting, though, was doing just the conditionals. If you are wearing blue, stand up and clap your hands. If you are, if you have blonde hair and you are wearing blue, and just kind of doing those different things. I had my 8th graders this last year just, can we do that activity again? Can we do it again? I was like, not today, but we'll do it at a different time or end the day with that. And they just thought it was the coolest thing because I would have a different student be the leader as to who's doing it, and it gave them some ownership.
I think what I love about that is that I think people are playing a lot of Zoom games like that. Like I've seen a lot of teachers talking about it, but they're not putting it together that is a conditionals idea. Like just giving teachers the vocabulary is something that I'm really interested in. In class or in our cohort, we had those cards that I don't know, it was actually when we were at the makerspace where just giving teachers like the language, like when you're talking about this in your class, this is a conditional, or this is, you know, whatever it is, that so that we can change their thinking that it has to be a separate class. It could be integrated into what you're already doing.
Yeah, absolutely. The more time I spend thinking about computational thinking, the more I'm like, you know, pretty much anything we do in a classroom can be spun into this if you put the right frame on it and the right vocab. Let me see if I can make the slides back up. My second resource bullet point here, Barefoot Computing, is a UK resource, and you'll need to create a free educator account. But if you're not familiar with that, it's awesome. They break computational thinking down into like 6 different 6 tools and 5 habits of mind, or something like that. There's like 11 different things, and it defines all of them really clearly, and then gives examples of how to integrate those into other lessons at every age level. So that would be an unbelievable resource if you're trying to work with other teachers or work on curriculum integration of your own. Cool. Yeah. So that's my answer to Amber's question. Who else has resources related to vocab or to helping people who are maybe scared of computers feel more comfortable with computational thinking or integrating unplugged activities? Whoa, cool. Andrea dropped a link to what looks like a giant glossary. Thanks, Andrea. Ooh, Vicky's sharing a Google Doc. Thanks so much.
Andrea, are there more of those cards? I know I remember asking about it at the time and like sharing it with our lower school teachers and thinking like, this would be something great for them to have in their classrooms. Are there more of those, or are they printables?
Tell me again what they were.
They were, I think they were a set of like 4 or 5 cards, and they had vocabulary on them, but also they had like applications, like how you're using it. I think it was an English assignment. Or,
yeah, I can drop a link. That was something that I designed just for computational thinking, was hoping to share that with teachers. Okay, yeah, I'll find a link and drop it either in the chat here, or I think we just have maybe another minute or 2 left here. I'll put it on the Padlet for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder about that.
Yeah, thanks for the time check, Andrea. You're right. We got started a little bit late, so in order to not start the second session late, we should probably get close to wrapping up, which feels kind of wild. But let's keep the conversation going. By all means, hashtag CS Unplugged is not trending on Twitter anymore. Not doing real well, so maybe we can get that revived and broaden the conversation to national level. Cool. If anybody's got a last minute connection, aha moment, a concrete next step, I think the brain research shows we're more likely to actually take something away from this if you try to articulate what your next step is going to be, or even like a short term and a medium term and a long term next step. So maybe take a second to jot those down, drop them in the chat, or even say one out loud if that's something you're comfortable with. Would love to hear what you're thinking.
My next step is going to be checking out that Google Sheet that Vicki shared. It looks like there's a ton of really useful ideas, so I really appreciate you sharing that, Vicki.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Vicki,
You're welcome.
and for that idea, Whitney.
I'm bookmarking anything I can find that helps students actually move their bodies. So any kind of movement, especially since they're all just plunked in front of a computer right now. So I have a special little folder. Anything where they can move their bodies is like high on my list right now.
I think a lot of us could use a little more movement in our lives. Thanks, Tracy. Okay. Anybody want to share a final thought, comment, question? We got people dropping awesome resources in the Padlet. Thank you all so much. All right, well, it looks like that's just about our time. Thank you all so much for joining me. I know that feels like it went by really fast, but hopefully you've got some things to look into on your own. I always feel like sitting down and actually following up with things I bookmarked at conferences is the most valuable part for me. So as you do that, please, by all means, continue to share things out in our notes or on Twitter or in other sessions. Looks like we've got about 5 minutes until the next one starts. So feel free to rejoin the main Zoom chat or just jump into whatever 10:45 breakout you want to do. Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing your thoughts in your morning with us. And we'll see some of you in the next session.